entertainments provided jazz and blues musicians with a common vocabulary, which also included the blues-based tropes of minstrel and medicine shows, as well as African-American folk ensembles and popular dances. One example is the jug and wash wort. Hey, just once is good. One example is the jug and wash wort tradition that was deeply rooted in the South and spread via minstrel and medicine shows. Much of the material was originally rag or blues-based, but a great many jug bands also incorporated elements of New Orleans jazz. The Old Southern Jug Band, a popular novelty act on the vaudeville circuit, cut two sides for Vocalion in 1924.
At the last minute because unfortunately we lost Sam on March 18th at age 85, and so I quickly called Carrie and said, you know, I'd love to do something on him. And one of the pleasures of this was I had no idea of I thought I had some sense of what Sam had done in his career. I had no idea. You know, there are a couple of things on that. These are some of his books. It's not all of them. I left out his collaboration with Len Kunstadt because I was just sticking to Sam's own things of jazz in the New York scene. He started out in jazz. He actually first went to New Orleans in 1950, not to do recording, not to do research, but to take clarinet lessons from George Lewis. But rather quickly, he ended up in the Army, and when he came back in 1953-54, he began feeling like he wanted to do a lot of documenting of what he was hearing around him in New Orleans, and particularly of the older guys who were still out there. He seems to have sort of seen himself following in the footsteps of Alan Lomax, but with a couple of clear differences. One of them was Sam really had no particular affiliation to the idea of folk music. He was just as interested in the music of the ballrooms, in written ragtime, and a lot of his research was trying to look into what the commercial music world of New Orleans had looked like in the late 19th and early 20th century.
So thank you very much.
multiple personalities led to Collier finally departing to form his own band. Around this time, Donegan changed his first name to Lonnie in honor of American blues guitarist Lonnie Johnson, who we saw perform on a tour of England in the early 90s. Lonnie Donegan's skiffle group became England's hottest act. His rip-roaring versions of traditional American folk songs and blues transformed British.
Down in Maine, I'm going down into Georgia, gonna knock down my last gate. I'm a gambling man, I'm a gambling man, and I've been in Washington many more weeks and three. I'm falling in love with a pretty little girl, she's falling in love with me. I'm a gambling man, I'm a gambling man, I'm a gambling man.
Top records of the country. This little girl here is Nancy Whiskey of England. Seated on her left is Charles McDevitt and his skiffle group, and they're going to sing the song they made famous all over the world, Freight Train.
Okay, because of time, we'll cut this a little bit now. Chas McDevitt's washboard player, Mark Sherritt, would knock a washboard's ridges flat in a week's time. His fingers were pitted and bleeding from flying pieces of zinc after a while. As a publicity stunt, he actually had his hands insured by Lloyd's of London for £5,000. A transplanted American named Johnny Duncan had another major skiffle hit called The Last Train to San Fernando. We're going to skip that one, but here's the sheet music for it and the disc it was recorded for Columbia Records. You can hear this on YouTube very easily. By 1957, the British airwaves were swamped with skiffle groups like Laurie Desmond and her Rebels, the Clyde Valley Stompers, and the Avon City Skiffle Group. Rock Island Line made Lonnie Donegan a rock and roll idol, as big in England as Elvis and Bill Haley were in the US, although Donegan's repertoire remained primarily souped-up versions of Leadbelly, Woody Guthrie, and Carter family songs. By 1958, the airwaves had become oversaturated with skiffle, and the music started to lose its steam, mainly because no new songs were being written in the skiffle style. Here are some of the records that Lonnie Donegan did that he learned from other sources, such as the Carter family with My Dixie Darlin', Woody Guthrie with Cumberland Gap, and then from Leadbelly, two songs, Lost John, Bring a Little Water Sylvie, and Lost John. And here's Elvis here. Elvis had a fresh new repertoire and more dangerous image, and quickly rock and roll took over youngsters' interest. And within a few months, only Donegan was left on the scene. He became more of a generic entertainer, broadening his base to record old music hall songs, like Does Your Chewing Gum Lose Its Flavor and My Old Man's a Dustman. Despite its brevity on the scene, skiffle left its mark on British musical culture. In 1957, a Liverpool lad named John Lennon started his own skiffle group called the Quarrymen. One of the first songs they ever performed live was Donegan's Puttin' on the Style. Two other skiffle-mad teenagers were soon added to the band, guitarist Paul McCartney and George Harrison. Elsewhere, a young drummer named Richie Starkey joined the Eddie Clayton skiffle group. He would later change his name to Ringo Starr. Another Liverpool skiffle fan, Jerry Marsden, future leader of a band called the Pacemakers, left school at 15 to form a skiffle band. In Northern Ireland, teenager Van Morrison acquired a guitar and Carter family songbook and formed a skiffle group called the Sputniks. Other future British rock stars included Ray Davies of the Kinks, Jeff Beck, Joe Cocker, Chaz Hodges, Wayne Fontana, Freddie Garrity of Freddie and the Dreamers, Roger Daltrey of The Who, and Brian Jones of the Rolling Stones all got their start by playing in British skiffle bands. And in this last clip, we see a 14-year-old Jimmy Page of Led Zeppelin performing in an amateur skiffle group on a BBC Talent showcase.
Now then, you're called what?
James Pickleman.
And you come from?
That's it.
What are your two names? Yours is
James Page and...
David Hanson. Both from Epsom. And what are you going to do with skiffle? They got skiffle?
No, I do, biological research.
Do you? I do that already. What do you mean by biological research?
Well, cancer, if it isn't discovered by all.
That'll be the last audio track, Lenny. No more audio tracks. The legacy of skiffle lived on in the Beatles' repertoire. If you listen to All Together Now from the Yellow Submarine album, you will hear skiffle in all of its glory, represented by this recording. And also there's a brief snippet of Maggie May on the Let It Be album, which was made popular by the Vipers skiffer group. The musicians who got their start in skiffle bands became the central thrust of the British invasion of the 1960s. Without skiffle, many of them might never have gone into music in the first place. Today, Lonnie Donegan, the instigator of skiffle and its only superstar, who propelled it from intermission music at jazz gigs to a nationwide phenomenon, is a forgotten figure, never even being nominated for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. To Paul McCartney, he was the first person we had heard of from Britain to get to the coveted #1 in the charts, and we studied his records avidly. We all bought guitars to be in a skiffle group. He was the man. And Elton John agreed. He was the first person I ever saw on British television who played something different. It was fantastic to see someone change music that much. Lonnie Donegan died of a heart condition in 2002 at the age of 71. In 1999, he was asked by British disc jockey Mike Harding how he felt about being such a seminal figure in the development of British rock and roll. Donegan considered this for only a moment and then said, "Discreetly proud." That's it.